Hello, everyone. This is Harold Cruz, and this is Southern Nationalist Radio, and this is episode 62. And this week we are back with Brad Griffin while Dr. Hill is attending to some league matters. Evening, Brad.
Good evening, Harold.
Good evening. How's everything down in Alabama these days?
Well. It is certainly, quite a day in Alabama. The aftermath of Doug Jones winning a U.S. Senate seat in Alabama.
Yeah.
Because of all what's happened, and I guess that's what we're going to be talking about.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that's what everyone's expecting. What was the final percentages, by the way? It was kind of a squeaker, wasn't it?
If I'm not mistaken, I think Doug Jones won by like 1.5%.
That's what, like 10,000 votes or something now?
Something like that. There was enough. I'm pretty sure there was enough write-in votes to have made the difference. Something like I think 20,000 people voted for Nick Saban.
Okay, and
as a protest candidate.
What I understand, Judge Moore may be contesting the vote.
I believe last I heard he hadn't conceded.
Yeah.
But I kind of just turned it off in fury last night.
Yeah, it was looking good there for a while. He was maintaining like 6 or 7% lead with even like 2/3 of the votes. The briefings reporting, but then the heavily black counties and the black belt down your area started reporting as well.
Oh, I saw it, and what happened is that they let the rural white counties report in first, while they hung back with the ballot boxes in Birmingham and Montgomery,
see how much
in Mobile and most of the black belt, and then like after something like 80% had been reported, then those started reporting. And then Roy Moore's lead, was cut from something like 8% to 4% to 2%, and then Doug Jones, right at the end, surged over the top.
Yeah.
So that's a pattern we've seen before. These big urban areas.
Well, it's
always wait until the end to report the results.
Well, it's a common practice, like you were saying, but the suspicion is, and I think it's justified, is that they're holding back these heavily minority urban areas so they can find out how many votes they need so they can just stuff the ballot box. Because you were getting black precincts who were reporting over 100% of what Barack Obama got. And that is just not something you really expect to see.
That's not, that's not really surprising in an extremely close race. I mean, there could be enough voter fraud there could have been enough voter fraud to swing it to Doug Jones, but it really should have even been close. And so I probably suspect there was some voter fraud.
Yeah.
In the black belt. I mean,
well, we know for certain.
I know they've been found guilty of it here before in I want to say Greene County.
Yeah. Well, we know for certain that there was some because there always is, but whether it was enough, that hasn't been determined yet. If
exactly. I think there might have been some, but it wasn't the decisive issue here.
Okay.
You want to dive into that?
Well, I mean, one thing I hope that comes out of this is, and I mentioned this in response to you on Twitter, is hopefully is that there is going to be some focus on the likely or potential voter fraud that took place in Alabama, since this was such a close race, and this will give some impetus or put more focus on the electoral reforms that Trump has been touting, and he put that Kobach, that state official from Kansas, in charge of. So hopefully that will cause some good effects.
Well, I mean, I noticed this time we had like electronic. It was like electronic. Well, we voted the same, but we had like an electronic sign-in system that I haven't noticed before, where they scan your driver's license and they tick you off on a little thing. But we still use the same voting machines we've had in the past.
Okay.
That was a new twist on it. I was actually encouraged by that. I thought that that might be a more foolproof method.
Now, is that was just your personal experience from your precinct, or was that?
My precinct before, they haven't scanned my driver's license and in order to log me into a system and tick me off.
Okay.
But they did this time.
So is that mandatory?
This was in a heavily black precinct too.
Oh, okay. So is that mandatory across all precincts in Alabama?
I'm not sure, but it's definitely something new that they're doing.
Yeah, that's good.
That's what it's. I mean, and from my impression of my polling place, it looked about the same as it has every other time I've been.
Okay.
But I mean, like when I went there, I noticed there's a little uptick in white turnout.
Oh.
Then I was kind of encouraged by that news. But of course, black voters were extremely excited. There was these Doug Jones signs everywhere. In fact, on one of the previous podcasts we did about Roy Moore, it was during the podcast we did about Poland, right?
Uh-huh.
And we got to discussing Roy Moore, and I was walking around, I'll walk around downtown sometimes in the evenings. And I was doing that podcast, I was walking around, and there was just these Doug Jones signs out, and literally, I mean, frankly, the rich people in town who had the nice houses and stuff, all had the Doug Jones signs out there in the front yard. So it was very noticeable.
Yeah.
And it was kind of worrisome that, you see all the Doug Jones signs here in the historic district.
Yeah.
Now if you go through the Montgomery suburbs, I mean, I'm sorry, some of the higher in neighborhoods in Montgomery, you see all the Doug Jones signs. You see that in Birmingham, the Birmingham suburbs. You see it in, I know in Auburn, which I've been to a couple times recently, and in Huntsville. So how it played out, I mean, if you were just going on what you were seeing in terms of the yard signs, it wasn't a surprise at all.
Oh. Well, now, of course, Doug Jones, he had a lot of money, I'm sure. There was no shortage of donations to his campaign. He had a lot of celebrity support, whether it's just a vocal and in donations as well. And, of course, he had a lot of backing from the National Democratic Party, where Roy Moore did not have it from the GOP, at least until the very end.
We're diving into it here. Well, what happened was, when I had never even heard of Doug Jones until, I found out, that's who he'll be facing in the general election. There was no excitement about this race at all, and Roy Moore was, well ahead of Doug Jones. After the primary was over and he defeated Strange, it was going to be a blowout. It was going to be a non-issue, right?
Yeah.
It was all that. It was like that way all the way through the election in Virginia. And the Democrats ran a great campaign. I mean, black turnout was undoubtedly through the roof. So they poured millions and millions of dollars into the get out the vote effort. I even got some stuff in our mailbox, which was kind of surprising. There was these signs everywhere. The Democratic Party was absolutely united, right? I mean, the only way they could have won is if they had an extraordinary turnout and excitement. I mean, they're riding the anti-Trump backlash, but they needed more than that, right?
Yeah.
Let's be crystal clear here. Even if there was voter fraud, and it might have tipped the race, it shouldn't have been enough to throw this to Doug Jones. Even if the Democrats ran the most spectacular campaign they had here in 30 years, which they did, that shouldn't have been enough either. They needed more than that. And what they needed was for the Republicans to campaign against their own candidate, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And let's just be completely honest here. That was the decisive issue, was the behavior of Republican voters.
Yeah, to reduce the Republican turnout. And also, of course, the media had its role in justifying the GOP establishment's repudiation.
Well, I mean, it was they were on the same side. All this stuff, all these accusations about how Roy Moore hit on all these underage girls and stuff, right? All this stuff came out, and it was absolutely fabricated. The whole stuff about the yearbook, that was, the woman who said that she did that, actually, transcribed, his handwriting onto the forged his handwriting on the yearbook, right?
Yeah.
Another woman, later came out and admitted that, she wasn't even touched by Roy Moore, right?
Yeah.
But all this stuff was given from, who was the guy who ran the Jeb Bush Tim Miller, I think is his name. He was, I think he was Jeb Bush's press secretary back during the campaign, right?
Okay.
Well, all of this toxic stuff was given to the Washington Post by, this dirt on Roy Moore was by Jeb Bush's communications director.
Yeah.
Okay? They planted the story in the Washington Post in order to take out Roy Moore. You see, that was the plan all along, even yesterday, right?
Uh-huh.
I was sitting, it was before the election results was coming in. There was a news article about how if Roy Moore had won last night, the plan was that today all the senators would have a meeting about immediately opening up an ethics investigation so they could get rid of him if he won the election, right?
Well,
so
let me say something about that.
Go ahead.
An ethics investigation can only really concern a senator's or a congressman's actions while in office. Any actions taking place prior to taking office have no bearing whatsoever. They can't really open an ethics investigation concerning prior actions to taking office.
That's interesting. Well, that's how determined they were to. I mean, there was a big question. A lot of senators openly said that Roy Moore shouldn't have been seated if he won the election.
Yeah, that's damn the rule.
Been the rule, even though that's illegal, and I think on the Powell decision. They said that they all agreed that there should be an ethics investigation, even though, as you said, this involves conduct from 40 years ago. It shouldn't even be a relevant matter, right?
That's right.
This is just hearsay from 40 years ago. There's no proof of it whatsoever. I mean, you've got some accusations, but there's no proof of anything that happened, right?
And some of which have been discredited. So let's be honest here and let's look at what happened. Every single senator that I know of, including Ted Cruz, the only one I'm not sure about was Rand Paul. Mm-hmm. But at a minimum, 51 out of 52 senators, Republican senators, disavowed Roy Moore's campaign and went off and would say negative things about him. Jeff Flake got on Twitter and was sending out, a donation he made to Doug Jones, right? Oh yeah, for pretty much all of November, the GOP senators were denouncing.
They were saying it was true. They were saying it was true, and Mitt Romney was saying it was true, and it was identical. It was a replay. It was an identical replay of what happened with Donald Trump in the last October, right?
That's right.
Because we've seen that. I mean, this is not the first time they've done that. They tried it on Trump. Now, in Alabama, here's the thing. In Alabama, Trump won decisively. But in other states, notably Arizona is one, Texas is another, Georgia especially, South Carolina, Trump underperformed Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
And the reason is because all these suburbanites, not in Alabama, but in a lot of these other southern states, did not turn out to vote for Trump. They were affected by all this, all their leaders saying, don't vote for this guy, right?
Well, I think
so. They drove down the turnout in a lot of these other states.
Yeah, I think the difference between Trump and Roy Moore in Alabama was simply the pure toxicity of Hillary Clinton. I think that was a big role in the different effects from the smears. That's
a good point, and that probably. It probably is relevant. Roy Moore wasn't running against Hillary.
Yeah, and
the elections he'd won in the past had been close. It'd have been 2 or 3 or 4 point races, right?
Yeah. And
so this was enough to defeat him, is what happened. Swing the vote, just slightly.
And Doug Jones is essentially an unknown person, aside from
this
race, because he's never held public office before. He's been a U.S. attorney for a few years, but he's never held public office that I know of, has he?
I believe he was a prosecutor or something.
Okay, well, that in some states that's a public office. Okay.
I think he was a prosecutor or something for. They said he prosecuted the Klan way back in the day for the 16th Street church bombing.
Well,
like I said, I don't even really know much about Doug Jones. I just assumed he would be gone.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying he's not really known, so he didn't have that level of toxicity that Hillary
even I didn't know much about him.
Yeah, so, and then you
he didn't have Hillary Clinton's, that firmly established view.
Yeah, and then you had Moore, who had some pretty high negatives coming in, just because he's kind of a polarizing figure.
Yeah, well, I mean, the bottom line here, and I knew it the way the election was going. Even before all the vote was halfway counted, I had discerned what was happening. And I knew that Jones was going to win. Even halfway when it was 50% in, I knew. I was sitting there looking at my phone. It's Montgomery hasn't reported, Birmingham hasn't reported, Mobile hasn't reported, and all these rural counties have reported. And it's going to swing once it goes the other way. But the thing is okay. I remember talking to you on this podcast, and I remember walking around downtown. And everywhere you go, in all these nice, well-to-do houses, you see the Doug Jones sign out in the front yard. And that's the story here. Now, I know some people are saying on the internet, continuing the woman question debate, that it was women, and there was a gender gap, right?
Yeah.
But there's always the thing is there's always a gender gap, right? Women, in all the elections I know of in the past in Alabama, presidential elections, state elections, there's always been a gender gap in that white women are slightly more less likely to vote for the Republican, or slightly more pro-Democrat, right?
Yeah.
So that gap is nothing new. But the thing that was new was that Doug Jones won something like 30% of the white vote. Right? Okay, there's always been a gender gap, but he won 30% of the white vote and had an enormous black turnout. That's the only way he could assemble a coalition to win here.
Yeah,
and then you're like, well, who are the white people who went out and voted for Doug Jones? And it's it's people in college towns like Tuscaloosa and Auburn. It's all these well-to-do people, not just in the well-to-do suburbs of Hoover, the Vestavia Hills, or areas around Huntsville, parts of Mobile County. Even in the Black Belt, I see it all here. All the nice, well-to-do houses had the Doug Jones sign. So it was the well-off, upper middle class Republicans, especially the suburbanites, and more than anyone else, the suburban white women, who caused this to happen. And it's totally 100% about the class issue. Let's be frank here. That's what it was.
Yeah.
They did not want. They thought that Roy Moore was, this yokel, this racist throwback. He was. The thing is, the thing they were angry about is that Luther Strange lost the primary. So, they just considered Roy Moore an embarrassment for class reasons, and that's why they couldn't vote for him. It's that simple.
All right.
And that's how it won. That's how you had all the Republicans out there pushing that message from the Senate on down, from Mitch McConnell on down. Locally, you had Senator Shelby, who went and said he wrote in a candidate, probably Luther Strange. And the plan here was, clearly, the plan was to throw the election to Doug Jones so that in 2 years, Luther Strange can run again, and the GOP establishment can hold on to the seat, and to deter Bannon from taking out other senators like Corker and Flake.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
Well, I don't know.
It worked.
Well, it worked in Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've tried that. They may find out that Doug Jones is going to be reelected because two people can play that game.
Exactly, and I've been saying this all day. What happens? Okay, I was a big Moore supporter, and the reason I was a big Moore supporter is because I thought, unlike I look at all these politicians, right?
Yep.
And I'm extremely negative on politicians because I don't think they have integrity.
Oh yeah. All this.
Roy Moore does, right?
Yeah.
He's been thrown out of office twice for his religious beliefs. He stood up during the Ten Commandments controversy, where he became a national figure,
and the gay marriage. as well,
and the gay marriage against the SPLC. That's how he became like such a well-known figure, right?
Yeah.
And people respected that. He's a Christian. Now, here's the thing, okay? The Republicans have been running on these social issues for 40 years now, especially abortion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have all these people like Roy Moore, who's a true believer in the social issues, right? He is really against homosexuality.
Yep.
He is really against gay marriage. He is really against sodomy and transsexuals.
Prayer
abortion, right?
Public prayer in schools.
Prayer in schools, for Christianity in the public sphere. Okay, he really believes all this stuff, right? And all these people who voted for Moore really believed it too.
Yep.
But these these conservatives, right? They run on it, but you see, the thing is that they don't believe it.
No.
For 20 years, the Republicans have controlled the Supreme Court. They haven't gotten rid of abortion. In fact, not only have they not gotten rid of abortion, they didn't get rid of affirmative action. They legalized sodomy.
Yep.
They legalized gay marriage. And they upheld Obamacare too, the individual mandate.
Yep.
And what these judges really do with power is they have decisions like the Citizens United decision, right? That gives the donors so much power over politics. So, the Republicans they've been running for 40 years in the South on these social issues without ever believing it. They're just exploiting a backlash in order to advance their economic agenda. So I've been saying this on my blog, all these things are related, right?
Yeah.
How they took out Roy Moore for Strange could run again in 2020, how they did the huge corporate tax cut package, how they're about to do entitlement reform next, while they've been using the Trump presidency to ram through all these judges. They're conservative judges, but when people hear the word conservative, they think social issues.
Yeah.
But what these judges are really going to do is they're going to, make it a paradise for big business. That's the real agenda, right? And I've been saying this on my blog. Especially for the last month, I've been at a fever pitch, chronicling all these, games they're playing. And I've really been covering, I've been really going in this vein, especially, all the way going back to last December when I saw the cabinet picks, when they started bringing people like Gary Cohn into the cabinet and started shuffling people around, bringing people like Puzder in, which, was a huge red flag to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you look at this whole year and you see what's happened. The overwhelming message is all this. Trump had ran on this populist agenda, this nationalist agenda, and that agenda was completely shelved all the way back like last December.
Yeah. And
they've been doing their own agenda ever since. It was healthcare, it was banking reform, which went through the House, but they want to get rid of Dodd-Frank. They've been doing tax reform. They want to do entitlement reform next. They've been cutting all these regulations for businesses. They just signed the defense bill, the $700 billion defense bill, I think yesterday. So, it just goes to show, like, Republicans will run, like, you look at the whole campaign, and all they talked about during the campaign was build the wall, and these Muslims are, just coming into our nation, and all this stuff. And as soon as they get into office, it's all this corporate stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the favors for the donors. I'm really ranting here. I'm so angry about it. And I've been reading these National Review articles where they're like,
oh goodness,
oh God, yeah. The headline article on National Review right now is about how Roy Moore's defeat is a triumph of the New South over the Old South, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally a guy who has adopted a black kid named David French. And in the article, he's talking about how thousands of Republicans boycotted the election in order for Doug Jones to win. And he's right about that. And he talks about, like, in the article about how, this is the last gasp of the dying culture, and this is the kind of stuff. This is the way this is important because this is the way they see the world. They see all these working class voters in the South as just rubes, as rednecks who exist to support them and their agenda, and to have people like Luther Strange in office who are going to go vote for all these pro-business policies.
Yeah.
Right? And if they happen to, if really, if they think that what happened, what Roy Moore's guilty of is he didn't know his place. He won the primary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those Republicans are supposed to be at the back of the bus in the Republican Party. They're supposed to provide the votes for the guys who who drive up front, can push their their neoliberal economic agenda.
Yeah.
It's just infuriating, and they're just taking the mask off, and like you said on Twitter today, they have literally shot out the horse they've been riding for 40 years in the South. For 40 years, they've been riding these culture war issues in order to assume almost complete power. Like they had super majorities in almost every other southern state a few election cycles ago.
Yeah.
And they rode that horse all the way until now, and now they're like, well, all those people who voted for us are just bigots, right?
Yeah.
And an embarrassment. And it's so good that Doug Jones won. And it's just maddening. I mean, you just want to...
Yeah, the second that looks like, well, Roy Moore's going to be in the saddle instead of Luther Strange.
Oh, yeah.
We better, like I said, shoot that horse.
Yeah, exactly, because for then Luther can come back and ride it in 2020 after we got the tax cuts and entitlement reform and, maybe a free trade deal or two and a war. It really just goes to show there's two agendas, right? The Republicans run on two agendas. There's the agenda for the working class types, right?
Mm-hmm.
The build the wall, the ban Muslims, the get rid of abortion, be pro-marriage, all that stuff, which they do not believe in.
No.
And then there's the real agenda, which is like cut taxes for the rich, pass free trade deals, start wars, fund the military, do all this stuff for Jews in Israel. That's the real agenda, okay?
Yep.
Anyway, I'm ranting.
Sorry. Well,
very passionate about this.
Like I said, two can play that game.
Two can.
If they think that social conservatives, traditional Christians in the South or anywhere for that matter, have to vote for them because what other choice do they have?
Uh-huh.
No, they don't.
You're right.
Because the same thing, we put the right put their guy in there, not really the alt-right, but the traditional conservative right, put in their guy in there for Roy Moore. And they said, well, we don't have to vote for him, and, well, we don't have to vote for their guy either.
That's right.
It may be the only redeeming feature. It may be that the all-out effort that the Democrats made to get Doug Jones elected in Alabama, that would be a hard game to play in every Senate race in 2018 and every congressional race in 2018. I don't think it's scalable across the U.S. It's just too much funds that has to be spread out all over. And my understanding is that the DNC is very short of funds right now. They're having trouble raising funds. So
might change after this. They'll be able to say that, oh, we won in like Trump's strongest state. Support us, give money, and
that's certainly.
I really do think it'll gin up fundraising on their part. I mean, they've got this whole backlash working in their favor. The parties, well, I was going to say relatively united until all this Me Too stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, apparently that wasn't enough. I mean, apparently that didn't divide them in Alabama. So who knows? Maybe we're exaggerating how that's going to cause internal division with the Democrats. But come 2018, the question's going to be, I mean, do we go out and vote for the Republicans? And the question's going to be why? Because they've spent all of 2017 doing health care, then shooting down Roy Moore in order to cause gridlock in the Senate. So the only thing they're going to have to show for giving them power in 2016 is going to be this big, massive corporate tax cut, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to do the border wall. There's no way they're going to do the border wall with 51 senators and John McCain and Jeff Flake in there and Corker and all these other ones, right?
Well, I have news for the GOP. If there isn't a border wall, there's not going to be a GOP in 2018. It will be a small minority in Congress.
it's got to the point where I want them to lose Congress. I'll flat out say that. I want them to lose Congress because all they're using Congress to do is stuff like tax cuts, health care reform, going after like Medicare and stuff like that, and Social Security is what they want to do next, and it is obscene. It's like, they run on this message, and then literally everything they've done has favored business owners or large corporations or donors or something. They're doing absolutely nothing whatsoever for the working class people who have put them in power. By overwhelming numbers, that's how they won. And they did this, and they won the election in the Rust Belt, and they have completely forgotten about those places, and are just using it to jam through this massively unpopular agenda. So frankly, they deserve to lose. I want them to lose.
Yeah.
Because I just do not I have no confidence whatsoever in them anymore. It might have been plausible when there was this plausible idea that they were going to build the wall and that they were going to do all this stuff. And now, you realize, we've been saying it for years. This is an opportunity here for Southern nationalists, frankly, because we've been saying for years that you're not going to reform the system, you're not going to take back America, and even when you do, the GOP is going to do exactly this, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we're at. Now, they were given power. This was their chance to do all this stuff, to change our foreign policy, to change our trade policy, to change our immigration policy. This insane things like deportations are actually down from last year. That's the good side of that is that fewer people are entering the country, but they're actually deporting fewer people than they did under Obama. The trade deficit is up, right? The trade deficit with China and Mexico is worse. And all they have to show for it is they're giving this obscene amount of money to the military to 65. They want, instead of building the border wall, they want to spend $65 billion on wars in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the wars in Iraq and Syria are over because Russia and Iran defeated ISIS, right?
Yeah.
So where's that money going to go? Are they going to start a war with Iran now? Or another country, maybe a Libya-style intervention? That's what they want to do. They want to give this obscene amount of money to Israel's missile defense. They want to recognize Jerusalem. They literally want to give $500 million to the Ukraine in order to antagonize Russia. And they've imposed sanctions on Russia. This is what they have done with power.
Yeah.
And they flatly, this is not what we thought we were getting in 2016. Not at all. I've kind of gone from Roy Moore to make a general point about how the whole agenda for a whole year now has been completely different from what it was in the campaign. And, I'm just at my wit's end with these people.
Yeah. Well, we've been sold a bill of goods. You have some people in the alt-right who are advocating, they're very big about optics, of course, as far as taking over the GOP. But I don't really see that's a possibility. It seems kind of absurd, considering our size and resources.
What Steve Bannon is doing here is this is Tea Party 2.0, right?
Yeah.
And you have to ask, well, how did Tea Party 1.0 work out? And number one, the guys who won the elections, right?
Yeah, they were quick.
Whether it was David Bratt, who defeated Cantor, who now supports amnesty. Marco Rubio, who defeated Charlie Crist in Florida, who is the face of amnesty in the Senate, and pushed an amnesty through the Senate once he got into office. Nikki Haley, who's now the UN secretary. Okay, those are the Tea Party people who won.
Yep.
Now, when they had a candidate who they thought was dangerous, right? Like, say, Todd Aiken or Chris McDaniel, they did exactly what they did to Roy Moore, in that they got the suburban, college-educated types to move away from him in some kind of cooked-up scandal. And this is how they take out these candidates. So what happened in Alabama, I mean, really shows. I mean, you know, can you reform the GOP when the GOP is willing to vote for the Democrat in order to hang on to power?
Yeah, I don't think so.
It might be easier. To be honest, it might be easier to split the GOP and come away with a bigger piece, right?
Yeah.
Because there's far more working class. Still almost one. There are far more working class populist voters than the suburban moderate voters.
Yeah.
And so if the GOP broke up, I mean, they would be the ones who'd go the way of the Whigs, not us.
Yeah. Well, I think
that's my thing.
I think a populist party would take a certain percentage of the whites who vote for Democrats.
I think so too. Because then you could be completely honest.
Yeah.
I mean, you could honestly say that you don't want a tax system that favors the filthy rich,
yeah.
or a healthcare system that, you know, you're taking away healthcare from old people or poor people, or, you know, or you're just making it easier for the hard-pressed Wall Street tycoon, hedge fund manager, you know, who's, you know, Wall Street's on a tear under Trump. Yeah, I mean, you could honestly, I mean, a lot of people didn't vote for Trump because they just didn't believe it, right? Yeah. And they were right not to believe in it because it was fake populism.
Yeah, and then
if we had real populism, you know, it would attract a broader audience.
Yeah, and then you would have be sincere and be genuine as far as advocating for the average working man, and there'd be environmentalist plank in there as well, because we believe in protecting the environment. It's the only one we have.
And the social issues, which we're actually serious about.
That's right.
We are serious about immigration. We are serious about trade. We're serious about, you know, staying out of these wars.
Yeah.
I mean, our record, at least over the last year, has proven that. We strongly oppose this, right?
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, that's my hope. Is that in 2018 you begin to see the end of the GOP, that it breaks up. Yeah. As a party. Because conservative, this idea that you're going to have a conservative populist coalition is not going to work, because conservatives are just going to advance their agenda with the populist working class votes. Like I said in my article, it's a white working class populist party with, you know, upper middle class suburban corporate management agenda.
Yeah.
That's the GOP, like, in a nutshell.
Yeah, and
that's its dilemma.
Whoever pays the piper has the tune, or gets what tune he wants.
And I think they should lose after this entitlement reform push, where they're going to go after, okay, in order to pay for their obscene massive tax cutting and $700 billion on the Pentagon's budget, right? They're going to go after, you know, healthcare, education, you know, stuff that actually might help, you know, vulnerable people, which I don't support at all.
No.
And I really just hope this is the final straw.
Yeah.
I mean, when people finally wake up and realize that all these social issues the GOP's been running on are, while important, which people like us completely agree with. Like, I was a huge supporter of Roy Moore.
Yeah.
But people like us and Roy Moore are just being taken advantage of by conservatives in the GOP, and we need to break away from them.
Yeah, I think it's my attitude. I think for there to be a breakup of the GOP, it's going to have to go through a just complete disaster, and 2018 might be that disaster. If not, then it might be 2020.
I hope so. Like, I know I'll flat out do not believe at all in the Make America Great Again agenda. I think it's just, I mean, it has been, all the stuff they ran in the campaign has been just completely thrown out the window. It's just the Paul Ryan conservative types are hammering through everything they want to do. Yeah. Like they said at the beginning of the year, there's under no circumstances are we going to do tariffs, right?
Yeah.
When tax reform came up, they got rid of the border tax, right? They got, all during the campaign, Trump said, you know, the hedge fund guys are going to pay because we're going to get rid of this carried interest loophole. They kept that, right? They kept the carried interest loophole. And in the tax reform package also, I mean, when it passed the House and the Senate originally, it was going to, you know, the very top rate was going to stay the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the reconciled bill, they've dropped it, like from, I think, 30 29.6% to 37%, right? That's another change they made today. And so what they want to do is they have pushed a class agenda. Let's be frank here. They have pushed a class agenda where this is all about using power to make the wealthy pay less in taxes and have regulations on businesses, and they're going to pay for it, by taking money away from all these social programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps, and all that other stuff, and they're going to use that to pay for wars in not Syria, but wherever next, and this stuff. And they're taking money from the working class and the middle class, and they're giving it to the upper middle class and the wealthy. That's just frankly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And all this stuff about how they're going to do immigration and a border wall. I mean, two times already, right? They had two chances to do that border wall. One was, I think, in April, right?
Yep.
And they said, "Oh no, we can't do it." Right? There'll be a government shutdown.
Yep. Be September.
Then they say, "We'll do it in September." And then in September, they're like, "Oh no, we won't do it. We'll kick the can down the road, and we'll do it next time." Now they're going to have Doug Jones in there, so
yeah.
There's not going to be a border wall. It's just going to be the tax cut.
What, 51 votes?
Yeah.
Starting
51 votes, including Flake, McCain, Corker, Graham,
Snow,
Murkowski.
Yeah.
All these other unreliable people. Nothing that of any interest to us is going to get done. And I mean, the writing is on the wall now. People are going to be demoralized and furious and felt taken advantage of, and the Democrats are going to be extremely excited, and they're going to come roaring back into Congress. Unlikely as it is, given the map. I mean, this is an extremely unfavorable map for them. But if they can do it, I think. They did it in Alabama. So, I mean, how can you have a political party when one part of it is completely trying to sabotage the other half of it?
Yeah.
Right? It's not we just need to say this is not one party anymore. This is two. And we're the bigger part of it. We shouldn't be trying to reform the GOP. We should break away with the vastly larger working class section of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my view.
Yeah.
Anyway, been ranting.
No, that's all right.
Well, I mean, as far as Southern nationalism goes, like Dr. Hill wrote an article, and he made a number of good points I want to address. Doug Jones and all his people made explicit racial appeals. They made emotional appeals to women as a group, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did this in Virginia too. They where they had the ad with the redneck with the Confederate flag truck who runs over the poor Muslim.
Yeah.
So they make these anti-white ads. They play identity politics.
Oh yeah.
And then our cucks in the GOP turn around and they're like, all these people on our side are bigots and have no decency, and we'll show them by, letting the Democrat win. I mean, they literally fulfilled the cuck conservative stereotype. And these people are really just taking advantage of us, and it's getting us nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to be done playing with them.
Yeah. Well, it's a losing game. We're just pawns in it, and that's the way it'll be until we decide otherwise. So hopefully the GOP will be destroyed in 2018 or 2020, and I think it's very likely to happen if there's no border wall, and that's not going to happen. The only way a border wall can happen at this point is if
Jones voted for it in order to save his own ass, I guess.
Well,
maybe he could be a mansion,
No, I'm thinking the only way be is if the people who want a border wall crowdfund it, crowdfund the $15 to $20 billion by making donations, and then designate its sole use for the building a border wall.
They'd probably somehow try to tie that up in court too.
Yeah, well, they try to just steal it. That's what they would do. So.
What else is in the news? what else has happened since our last big?
Well, of course, there was the terror attack or the attempted terror attack in New York a couple of days ago, after the announcement of Jerusalem being recognized as the capital of Israel by Trump, and his state of intention to move the embassy to Jerusalem, although he just yesterday, I believe, delayed that for 6 months.
So I mean, who would have thought that a year ago, in December, conservatives would be trying to sabotage Roy Moore. They wouldn't have done the border wall. They're going to be effectively losing control of the Senate. Their only accomplishment is going to be a huge corporate tax cut. They would have unanimously condemned us over Charlottesville, and we're all about to get purged off of social media.
Yeah.
Quite a record year. I mean, could you have? I mean, even I wasn't black-pilled a year ago. I could not have imagined it turning out this bad. I mean, on that front.
Well, I don't know. I think obviously we are the primary opposition. Any sort of somebody who doesn't go along with their agenda gets labeled with our brush. They get lumped over in with us. So that tells you who they actually fear.
Yeah, I mean, they really have gone out of their way to stigmatize us and demonize us. Even though a lot of our issues are actually popular, the heritage issue is far more popular than this wildly unpopular tax cut.
Yeah.
We're not the ones who said, do the health care bill.
No.
We're not the ones who said do this obscenely unpopular tax cut, and we're certainly not the ones saying forge ahead and do entitlement reform next. I mean, all their ideas are extremely unpopular. Look at wars, right? We didn't go into Syria, and then that ended up resolving itself with Assad taking out ISIS without us even intervening. Russia declared victory on that the other day. So, I mean, down the line, if you really look at the issues on Ford, you can look at the alt-right or the hard right's position on culture, foreign policy, trade, healthcare. I mean, down the line that we clash with the GOP on all these issues, and the real secret here is our views are actually quite popular.
Oh yeah, the most popular view in the U.S. is building a wall. It has very high approval ratings. But
that's the thing that really that was the bait that got them in power.
Oh yeah, but unfortunately, with a sham democracy like the U.S., the majority doesn't actually rule.
It feels like they ran on a lot of our ideas, like the trade agreements, the foreign policy, the globalist foreign policy,
No, you mean the nationalist foreign policy, not the globalist.
Opposing political correctness.
Yeah.
Immigration, trade, everything. And have just completely shown that they didn't believe any of it. It was just completely cynically used.
Yeah.
Which I guess was to be expected, because none of us were ever saw anything remotely resembling power. We were shut out day one while these throwback conservative failures from all these stupid think tanks were put in power. So I just hope we really do need to disassociate ourselves from the GOP. So when the GOP goes down, as it's inevitably going to do after it pursues this unpopular agenda, we need to make it clear that they never even were serious about implementing our ideas, right?
No.
They were never serious about that border wall. They were never serious about curtailing immigration or changing our trade policy or having a more nationalist, America first foreign policy. They never believed any of it.
No.
They've completely stayed the course and have done everything that Mitt Romney would have done, what George Bush would have done. They're not focusing on the interests of their voters, the working class.
Yeah. Well, of course, the media will turn around and say, oh, well, the GOP went down because they were following this far-right agenda. And that's why
and that's why, I've been on my blog, emphasizing, no, they have not followed our agenda at all. They're trying to tie us to them when In fact, they're trying to say, oh, this is an alt-right presidency or a hard-right presidency. It's been the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Even the transgender thing, that's another thing that came up. That was one of the things we thought that Trump did was positive, and that got blocked by the courts.
Well,
a Southern nationalist might have predicted it would have.
Yeah, and also, was it Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, is saying that, no, they're welcome. Starting January 1st, they're welcome back on in. Is the taxpayer going to be on the hook for their surgery as well?
Trump put together, he really did put together, the definition of a cabinet that has conventional thinking, mainstream establishment views on everything down the line, right?
Yeah.
Trade, foreign policy.
Yeah.
There were some people in this cabinet that were good on trade, but, their ideas were never acted on. There was no tariffs or any change at all on that front.
And also, he's lost a lot of his members of his cabinet. They've left, or there's been some sort of
scandals
or something.
Yeah, he's pushed out Bannon, Price, the Health and Human Services Secretary.
Yeah.
Who else is left?
When you had
Reince,
Kelly, and then what was it, the Mooch?
The Mooch came in, and Spicer was kicked out.
Yeah. So people say that he's good at picking people, but he seems to lose a lot of folks. I don't know.
Well, I wonder how. I wonder. One question going forward is this: is how does after Mitch McConnell has done this in Alabama, what happens? In these other areas? How do people watching what happened to Roy Moore? How the Republicans came out and sabotaged the candidate in order to save Big Luther and conspired to have Big Luther run again in 2020. You would think this would have some kind of downstream effect in that it would depress. It was just overall going to depress, anybody's belief that they're just going to flat. Like, I'm at the point where I just flat out do not believe the GOP can ever be reformed.
No, it's just.
And how many other people out there like me, like you, watching this have come to that conclusion?
Yeah, the GOP is just slow suicide as opposed to a quick one with the Democrats.
Mm-hmm. So, after 30 or 40 years of trying to reform the GOP, they're doing tax cuts. They're going after New Deal Social Security programs and Medicaid and Medicare. That's their agenda, right?
Yeah.
That's the conservative. The conservative agenda has nothing to do with social issues. It's all about, military spending. It's all about, this neoliberal economics. It's what it is. That's what they're serious about, what they actually use power to implement. And they've just positioned themselves, thrust themselves in the power by harnessing all this anger over, our racial decline, our social decline, various backlashes for 40 years now. They've taken advantage of everyone and hijacked it in order to give this crap.
Well, the primary voting motive for the GOP is, at least they're not the Democrats. And we got to vote the GOP because we can't have the Democrats in there. And at this point, I'm about ready to say, heck, put the Democrats in there.
I am too. Look at student loans, right?
Yep.
Bernie Sanders would say, get rid of student loan debt. If issues like affirmative action or immigration or multiculturalism, abortion, if all this stuff is fake, all political correctness, if all this stuff is fake, and they don't, and their opposition to it is completely fake and not real.
Yeah. What else is there?
So what else is there? What else is there is that you have to choose between the GOP and the Democrats on taxes, on health care, on entitlements, on wars, on student loans, the environment, and all these other issues. And to be honest, the Democrat position is more closer to mine. So if they take over, I don't really care, because I know there's nothing to be lost in it. They never were going to build this border wall anyway.
Yeah.
They had the chance to do it several times. They didn't. They don't care about the debt. That's another thing they would say. Oh, the national debt is spun out of control. So then they do this huge tax cut and give this $700 billion military bill. They don't care about that. It's all about rewarding all these rich, powerful people. And so by not voting for them, I can do it in clear conscience because I know that I'm not losing anything by it.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point, we tried one way, the GOP, for a long time. It may be the point where we try accelerationism.
Frankly, I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I don't see another way. I think that the only way to reform the GOP, in my view, is to split it, because all other methods have failed.
Yeah.
The only way you can change that agenda is to split the party.
Yeah, you have to get the cucks out. These people who are just whose only concern is the size of the wallet.
And even if we do spend some time in the wilderness, out of that, we'll still have we'll be a lot better off than we are now. Yeah. We'll actually have a voice in politics once we get rid of the cucks. I mean, we'll be a minority party, but we won't be a party that's controlled by these people.
No.
And our message, we won't be turning off people who are skeptical of the cucks agenda.
Yeah.
Wars, immigration, trade, and everything else.
Well, that's something I've said for a while, is that pragmatism is only pragmatic on a short-term basis. But when you're looking on a long-term basis, pragmatism is not pragmatic at all, because you're just going along the same course and nothing's really changing.
That's right.
We may need to stop being pragmatic in the
be
short
radical.
term. Yeah, that's right. Well, Brent, we're coming up about the end of the hour. Is there anything you want to close up with, or anything you need to share?
Let's leave it at that. That was, I think, a really good episode. I mean, we really, shared our views and feelings about this.
All right.
And I believe a lot of people who, saw what happened in Remore, especially here in Alabama, are feeling the same way and thinking the same way that we are. While a lot of people, who've weighed in on this, they might be too secular, not really Christian, they might not. There's a little contrast there. So,
all right.
I think this is a good episode.
Well, I do too. What's the best place for folks to find you in case they haven't listened before?
It's at OccidentalDissent.com and OCC Dissent on Gab and Twitter. I'm mentioning Twitter last year because I expect to be deleted next week.
Yeah, same here, maybe.
All right, so find me there.
And for myself, I have Harold Cruz at Gab, and for the time being, Twitter as well, just at Harold Cruz on both places. All right, if that's it, we'll finish up, and I want to wish everything good night. And
all right.
Good night.